So this video is a discussion about sound, and I think a lot of people don't understand the impact that sound has in games. All you have to do to really realize this is play a game on mute or with the sound off, and you can feel a complete difference. Whether that's the sound effects indicating when things are happening, where things are happening, things like that, or maybe it's the music that invokes some kind of feeling in you. Maybe it's a feeling of scariness or anxiety, or maybe it's a feeling of excitement and a rush. It depends on what the mood is trying to be. Now, the thing is, game designers have known this for a while, but for us as game players, a lot of times it's lost on us until we actually realize what we're doing. So this video talks about how to integrate those types of things in our games. Now, not the game design side of things, but how to actually add sounds and music into our game. Now, the good thing is in terms of adding the content in there, it's actually very similar to the same way that we add images. There's not a lot of difference. So to demonstrate this, what I've done is I have included a few sounds in a project that I've already created here. The project has no code in it whatsoever at this point. However, I have opened up or added a few sound files to a folder. So here we have this folder, and inside of this audio folder, I have a music folder and a sounds folder. Inside the music folder, I have two sound effects. They're the same sound in different format, Tetris MP3, Tetris.ogg. We're going to be using the MP3 version. And then in sounds, we have three different sound effects, a pause menu sound effect, a dink, like just kind of it's like a metallic sound, and then an explosion sound effect. We're going to try and use all these. And what I want you to pay attention to is the file types as well. And we'll come back to this in just a moment, but they do matter. Now, these files are all sitting in this audio folder here. And what I want to do is I want to add them to my project the same way that I would add them in terms of images. Now, normally speaking, I'm just going to copy this folder here. Normally speaking, we would go into our program. So this one's called Sound Video Demo. And I'm going to go into my content folder. Now, right here is where we would typically add our images folder. And then inside of that, we'd have our sprites and our backgrounds folder. So in this one, I'm also going to have this audio folder. So normally we would have images as well. So now all of those things are sitting here in the same location. Great. So they're part of the project in terms of the project folder, but we haven't actually compiled them or added them in terms of content to our game. So the next step is to use our pipeline tool. So the first thing I have to do is I have to actually add them to the project itself. I'm not sure what's going on here with the with the video. You can't really see what's going on here. But I need to incorporate these. Let me just pause the video for a second to fix what's going on here. There we go. So I have my content folder. So I've connected the pipeline tool to my program, but I haven't actually added the audio yet. So I'm going to do this by right-clicking and saying add existing item the same way we do for images. I'm going to browse into my audio folder and into my sounds folder, and I'm going to grab all of them at once and hit open. So that added those, but I still need to add that background music in there as well. So I'm going to go into add existing item again, go to audio, go to music, and I'm just going to add the MP3. I don't need the OGG format. Hit open, and we should see both folders and all the files. So we should be able to compile now. It's doing its best to compile them all together. So I got a fail. Nope, it looks like they all worked. I don't know why it's, there we go. So it looked like all four files compiled perfectly. So we're just going to minimize this for now. And now we got to get into the actual coding side of things. Now, before I get into that, I want to talk to you about a few details that we need to keep in mind. First of all, in terms of the file formats. Well, what we need to realize is that there are two types of sound files that we're going to be playing in our games. The first one is something called a sound effect, and the other one is a song. Sound effects are short little sounds that we typically hear when some type of action occurs in the game. Maybe that is a bullet being like a gun shooting, or maybe something bouncing on the ground, something like that. These are things that they typically happen in rapid fire, meaning like you'll hear it a lot and consistently. whereas songs are meant to be more like background music. You may have a lot of songs in your game, but they'll get played at various moments. So for example, in Super Mario Brothers, you would have a typical level music, but when that timer hits a certain point, the music changes to much more fast-paced feeling, so the player is pushed to kind of run a little bit faster and work a little harder to get to the end. Now, we can work with the same things in our programs as well. So we're going to have sound effects and songs. Sound effects need to be in a WAV format. So I go into the sounds folder. You can see they're all in WAV format, WAV. Now, this is an uncompressed, completely lossless, meaning it's no quality is lost whatsoever type of format. So it's a little bit bigger in size. So even though these are really, really tiny sounds, they still take up more space than, say, an MP3 does. MP3s are the formats we're going to use for our music files. So these ones are a little bit larger in size in terms of because the music itself is longer, but they are compressed. So if this same sound file was a WAV format, it'd be about 10 times as large. So instead of 1.3 megabytes, it'd be about 13 megabytes. So it's a pretty big difference. So that's the difference. So song files must be MP3, sound effects must be WAV. Now you might be like, but how do I actually do that? What if I find a file that I like, but it's not in the correct format? Well, there's a few options you can do. First of all, you can download or use the school's version of Audacity, Audacity. That's a program that's made for editing audio. And you could just open up any one of your files and just save it as whatever file type you want. There's also online converters. So there's something like this. Let me open that up for you. It's a very simple tool where all you need to do is basically upload your file, choose your file format, and then hit click convert, and you're done. Nothing to it whatsoever. That's just an ad up there. Don't actually click on any of that stuff, of course. So that's how we would actually convert whatever file you need. What about finding the files themselves? Well, you got three choices really when it comes to finding the files. First of all, really two choices. First of all, you could easily Google them. You could Google something like, let's say I want to find a footstep sound effect. So I might say footstep. Now it's a sound effect, so I know I need a wave format. So I might say footstep wave. And you can see immediately that a couple come up here. Find Sound, SoundJ, on different websites. And that is the other choices that I was going to mention. There are websites such as like SoundJ and freesound.org that allow you to download these sound effects. So if I go here for a second, I can try it out and listen to it. You can't really hear that. First of all, my volume's really low. And second of all, you're hearing it through my microphone. Right? So I can download that as a wave format or MP3. But since it's a sound effect, I want to get the wave format. If it was a song, then I would want to get the actual sound. Now, some of you might be like, but what about other things? Where's another way I can get like music? Well, you can get that music however you want. Maybe mom and dad have CDs or something kicking around that you can rip to sound effects. Maybe you have MP3s on your computer itself that you want to use. I'm going to leave that up to you, but I'm sure you can Google ways to find MP3s easy enough. Okay, for whatever sound. And no, there's no limitation about what you're using in your game. It's completely fine. You're not making any money off this in any way, shape, or form. It's a school project, so you're okay to use pretty much anything. Just don't ever try and sell it, and you'll be okay. So that's how we would find the sound effects, using one of those search mechanisms. So now that we have our sounds, we know how to convert our sounds, we know how to load our sounds into our project, let's look at the actual code itself. And there is 4 steps to adding either a sound effect or a song to our games. So first up, let's start with the songs, background music, okay? Because they're a little bit easier. First thing I want to do is I want to create a variable to store my song. Now you're going to have one of these variables for every song. You might have an array of these instead of a single variable, but it's up to you. So let's say I have a song for my background music. So I might just call it BG music. Alternatively, I might have other songs as well, maybe song like menu music or something like that. Oops. I like to end all my songs with the word music so I know what they actually represent. I forgot to do the cardinal rule, which was whenever I make a new MonoGame project to run it to make sure everything shows up. That's why my song's not being highlighted right now. So let's do that. There we go. And you can see now song is being highlighted. Now I don't actually have menu music. I only have that Tetris music, so that's background music. So I'm going to get rid of this guy. So that's step 1, creating a variable to hold the song. Step 2 is, of course, loading the song. And loading the song works the exact same way as loading anything. We go to load content. We say our variable. In this case, my variable was BG music equals content.load. The same way we've been doing all loading. And then you specify the type of thing you're loading. In this case, we're loading a song. And now I have to specify where it is. It's in my audio folder. It's in my, what did I call it? Music folder. And it's called Tetris, I believe. But we can verify that just to make sure. Right here, audio, music, Tetris. Perfect. Again, I don't need the file format written there. I just need to put the actual file there. Now, let's make sure that we don't get that error that when we compile in the pipeline tool that it puts the sound effect in the wrong spot. Let's go take a look and find it. Let's see if it runs. So immediately it says it can't find the file that I want. So we got to go find that Tetris XNB file inside of our project and put it in the correct folder. So let's do that just to make sure. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come into my project right up here at the beginning, and I'm going to search for star.xnb. Now it should find all of those sound effects and whatnot. So there's my Tetris, and there's my dink, my pause menu, and my explosion. So I'm going to grab them all because I'm going to need them all. Now we got to put them in the correct folder to make sure that they're actually being stored correctly. So it says that it should be in that bin debug content folder. So let's backtrack. So we got to go to bin, debug, and we're missing the content folder. It's not here. So we got to build it. Okay, content. All right, we go inside of here. Now it says, okay, it's got to be in the audio folder. We forgot it. We got to build that whole audio folder structure. Okay, it is part of it. It's just part of the deal. We do it and we move on. And now we need that music and sound effect folder. Music and sound folder. And we'll just paste these here and then drop them in the correct folder. So the Tetris goes into the music file, music folder, and the other 3 go into the sound folder. Okay, so now all of our files have been compiled and should be in the correct folders now. So we should be able to do this. So let's stop and let's see if we can compile now. So now, oh, why is it looking for OGG? I did not build that. File not found exception, could not find. Why did that happen? Let me just pause and take a look. So after a little digging, it turns out that what actually happens here is when the music files are compiled, they're also compiled into that OGG format as well. But it's only the MP3 files when they're compiled. So for example, when I'm in here, inside this music folder, we can see that the Tetris got compiled into XNB, but it also got compiled into that OGG file. So it looks like it needs both of those. So I'm going to grab this guy as well, and we're going to put it into the proper folder. Audio, music, oops, wrong one. Here we go, bin, debug, content, audio, music, right in here. And that should now work. Stop, and let's try one again. There we go. So now it compiles. Step 2, done. So step 1 was to create the variable. Step 2 was to load the music. Step 3 is to basically set up any options we want. So when we're playing songs, we use something called a media player. So media player, it's an object, and we can do things like setting the volume. What that means is any music that comes out of this media player is going to have a certain volume, and we can set it to any value between 0 and 1. 1 being maximum volume and 0 being completely muted. So for example, if I put it at 0.8 F, that means that it's running at 80% of its maximum volume. Okay. Another thing that we can actually put on, since this is background music, typically speaking, we probably want that music to start over again when it ends. Otherwise, we would just have kind of dead air going on. But this is an option for you. So I could say media player dot is playing, or is repeating. I apologize. Is repeating equals true. So that is setting up its options. That's step 3. There's only one step left. Play. Now we can play our background music in 2 locations. The obvious place is if you want to play it immediately is we do it right here. So all I have to do is say media player dot play. And then we just specify the thing that we want to play. In this case, BG music. And now if we run our program, I'll have to turn my volume up here so you can actually hear it. Ooh, nice and loud. Woo, that was a little louder than I wanted. I'm hoping you guys heard that. I'm going to turn that down a little bit so I don't go deaf here. Let's go back to where we were. So you could hear that it played immediately. So option number 1 is play it as soon as you have it. Now that may not always make sense for your game because you don't know what's going to be happening, and different games require different situations. So maybe you want to play this after the user hits some kind of button. So maybe it's like they hit the play game button and then you start the game music, that kind of thing. So if you want to do that, that means that you need to start the music playing down in update. But you got to be careful. So I'm going to play it right here. Media player dot play background music. Now watch what happens. I'm going to hit start. And we hear nothing. And the reason why we hear nothing is basically because update draw, the game loop runs at 60 frames per second. It's coming in here and it's restarting the music 60 times a second. So it's not even getting a chance to get going. So the way we solve this problem is a simple if statement. We just want to say, hey, if it's not currently playing, then play it. So if media player dot state is not equal to media state dot playing. Oops, not pause. Playing. So only play it when it's actually not playing. So let's start it now. Very loud still. There we go. That's a little bit better. But you can see that now it actually is going and it's stopping when it needs to stop. Or sorry, starting when it needs to start. So that's how we handle music and background. Now I'm going to comment this out right now because we're trying to demonstrate a few other things here and I don't want the music blaring while I'm doing the sound effects, otherwise we won't really hear them very clearly. So that's music. The 4 steps. Create the variable, load the music, set your settings, and actually play the music itself. Done. Sound effects are pretty much the same thing, just with a different file type. So when we want to create a sound effect, we need a sound effect for every single sound in our game. Okay, so first thing, I'm going to create a sound effect. Let's say, so we had 3 of them. We had our ding, so I'm going to say ding sound. And we had our sound effect. What was the other one we had? We had, let me just check so I don't forget. Ah, yes. We had our pause sound. I'm just ending these with the SND so I know that they're sound effects. And one last one. We also had our explosion sound. So I'm going to say explode sound. So there's our 3 file types and our 3 variables. Now we need to do the same thing for step 2. We need to load in our sounds. So we go down into our load music, or our load content, and we're going to load our 3 sounds. So we have our ding sound is equal to content. Oops. Content.load, and it's going to be a sound effect. And we got to specify the location, audio / sound / now these names are a little bit awkward on mine. 11-dink. Okay. Oh, did I say ding or dink? Should be dink. Try that again. There we go. And now I'm just going to copy and paste for the other 2 and change the names. So we have dink sound, we have pause sound, and we have explode sound. And we got to change the names. So pause was O2-pause menu. And then the explode was 13-explosion. All right, so let's make sure it compiles. Make sure we didn't make any mistakes here. Oh, so we got an error with my explosion. I probably spelled something wrong. Explosion. I did. So it should be 13, not 12. There we go. Try again. Okay, so our sound effects are loaded. Now, step 3. Set up any sound effects, or set up any options. It's not really a lot of options when it comes to sound effects, because a lot of times you're just trying to play a sound as fast as possible. That's really the key here. But there is one option that you may want to set. Now, this option applies to all sound effects when you set it. So it is sound effect dot master volume, and you can set this to any value between 0 and 1. So I'm going to set this at, let's say, we'll set this at 0.7F. So that means what this is it acts as a multiplier. So if you don't change anything about your sound effects when you play them, they're only going to play at 70% of their volume. However, we do actually have the option of changing the individual volumes of each sound effect. But when we do that, they get multiplied by this thing. So let's say we set the individual volume at 0.9. That 0.9 would then get multiplied by this 0.7, and we'd end up with 0.63 volume, which is obviously a little bit different. So most times you're probably not going to want to set this, and it just sets at the default of 1, but know that you do have the option to do that, because maybe you want all your sound effects at once to be quieter. It's possible. It's up to you completely. All right, so that is setting up our settings. Now we just got to play the sound effect. Okay, so we do that. Your sound effects are always going to be played in update, but sound effects always happen because something else happens. They don't just happen magically. They happen because some action occurred in the game. So maybe that's a user hitting the jump key, so you get the jump sound effect. In this game, let's say for example we want to hit the pause. So I'm going to create a keyboard state, and we're going to do some interaction with the keyboard. So keyboard state KB, and I'll do a previous one as well. Previous keyboard state. Oops, that was not correct. Keyboard state, previous KB. And now we just need to check. So if kb.isKeyDown, let's say keys.p, and previously it was not down. There we go. So if it's currently down, but it was previously not down, that means we want to play the sound effect. So this is how we play a sound effect. First, we just say the name of our sound. In this case, it's pause sound dot create instance dot play. That means it's creating one pause sound effect instance. It's creating one pause sound effect right now. And the reason why we do it like this is because, let's say, for example, you were shooting a gun. You pull the trigger once, you only want to hear that gunshot sound once. But if you're shooting a machine gun, well, then you want to hear that sound effect repeatedly. And that means that you play this sound effect. The previous one may still be playing. That's okay, because each one of these instances creates its own sound effect that plays until it's done. So you can actually achieve this goal. So let's test this out. Whenever we hit the P key, we should get the pause sound. I'm not hearing too much here, so maybe we are not getting it. So let's make sure that it's actually getting into the code. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Oh, we're not getting it. And why are we not getting it? Because we forgot to do KB or keyboard KB equals keyboard update or get state. And right above that, previous KB equals KB. Got to do the basics first. Try again. There we go. So a nice little sound effect to go to the pause menu. Pretty common, sound like an 80s game. Now the other sound effects we have explosion and we have the dink sound effect. So I'm just going to use those on the keyboard as well. Now you would probably do those in different circumstances. So explosion might be when like your spaceship blows up or something like that. Oh, and the dink sound may be when something's bouncing off of some metallic surface or something along those lines. But just to demonstrate how this works, I'm just going to set them out to keys. So let's copy and paste this. So let's do one for explode. Let's say the E key. Oops. And we are going to do explode sound. And then for the dink sound, let's do a D key. Should be pretty straightforward then. Okay, let's try this out. So pause, still works. Let's try exploding. Not bad. And the dink. Now I'm going to hit these really fast so you can see that it basically starts playing over top as fast as I can. Same with the pause. Each one is its own sound effect. Explosion. So we can actually play them in rapid fire basically because our game runs at 60 frames a second. So basically it could play 60 of these sounds in a second if we wanted them to. Now this is all very basic demo. I've put together a slightly more complex demo that uses the same sound effects that we can show you. This one is posted on our classroom for you so you can actually see this. So this does the same stuff, but it just does it automatically without me doing anything. Volume too loud. Let me turn that down a bit. Now listen carefully. You can hear the dink sounds every time something bounces. Now if I hit the space key, it'll explode. And a pause. Can we still explode? No. So during pause menu, I don't have the ability to explode. I have it actually, the game actually paused, so nothing happens. But I can unpause. And the game continues. So you notice that the pause is actually pausing the music and everything. So let's see how that's actually happening. So I've set up a bunch of variables to move everything around. I've loaded all the background music and the sound effects the same way we did before. I loaded everything in from the pipeline and all that kind of stuff. These things here are just loops that are setting up the ball locations and the rock locations as well as their directions that are randomized, so it's different every time. This is just setting up the explosion sound effect or the explosion animation, and this is just loading the data in itself for the sound effects. These ones up here, sorry, are loading the images in that we were using. And then down here, I'm setting up a few options. I'm setting up the volume of the media player. I'm setting up is repeating, and I'm starting the music to play immediately in this game. And that's fine. That's completely up to me if I wanted to do that. Down in update, get my keyboard. Now here I have the P key, and I say every time they hit the P key, swap the game pause state. So set it to the opposite of what it currently is, and play the pause sound. Now, notice here I have this extra little code here that says when I'm pausing the game, I want to pause the media player. When I'm not pausing the game, which means I'm resuming the game, I want to resume the media player. So this is a way I can pause and resume my music. Now down here, this is the actual gameplay. I only do this gameplay if the game is not currently paused. In which case, if I get the space key, I'm causing the explosion. So there, I'm starting the animation, and I'm creating the sound effect for the explosion. Down here, I'm moving all the balls, and after I've moved the balls, if they collided with either of the walls or any of the walls, then I am playing my sound effect. Now, what you notice here is something that I didn't show you yet. Before, in our previous demo, I said when we wanted to play a sound effect, we had to just say the sound.createInstance.play. But what if you want to set up some kind of options for it? We can actually do that. And the way we would do that is instead of doing something like this, we would actually create a new variable right here on the spot called a sound effect instance. And I'm going to call this pause. And I'm going to set this equal to pause sound dot create instance. So instead of using that instance that's created immediately to play like we did on the previous line, we're actually storing it so we can manipulate it. So now I could say things like pause dot, and now I can start checking things. I can check its volume, I can check its state, I can change its pitch, all sorts of different things. So I'm going to say pause.volume equals, I don't know, 0.9, or let's say 0.3. Now we all remember how loud that pause sound effect was before. So now when I run it, it should be quite a bit quieter. Oh, sorry. Once I've set up the options, I can actually play it now. So now I can say pause.play. So what this does, these 3 lines allow me to manipulate the pause sound effect instead of just immediately playing it. So it all depends on what your game calls for at that given moment. It's up to you. Let's run this. Now I hit the P key. You can hear it's a lot quieter now. So that may be something you want to do. Now remember, this 0.3 is being multiplied by this 0.7. So my 0.3 is actually only 70% of 0.3. If I put this back to a 1, or just comment that line out, that sound effect is going to be more loud. Roughly 30% more loud. And you can hear it. So there is definitely a difference in there. So that is what that other program is doing. So instead of just straight up playing the sound effect, here I'm actually setting it to 70% of its volume, and then I'm playing it. Just to make it a little bit more quiet because it was too loud before. So if I take this out, it should be at maximum volume now. These are the ones moving vertically. Let me turn off the media player for a second, so you can hear it without the media player. So the black balls, they're making a louder sound than the red ones right now. And the reason being is the black ones are the ones that are moved vertically, and those are the ones that I kept at maximum volume. If I put that back on, they're going to be quieter now. It's hard to tell, but it is definitely actually what's happening here. And then the these ones down here, the rocks, they're playing at maximum volume all the time, just so you can see the difference between the two. Okay, let me put back all my stuff so everything's where it should be. And that's it. And then down here is just drawing as we normally would. There's nothing special there. So that is sound. That video was definitely longer than it needed to be, but I went into a lot of detail to really cover everything. There's a document that is set up for you to actually look at to make sure that you got all the little nits and pieces and everything that you need. All right, that's it for now. Good luck and have fun.